Hey there, welcome to JC 3D, or 12 Days of Realism. This is day 5, I think. I'm not a math guy, so bear with me. I don't know exactly which day, but the focus that we have today is volume. Now, day 3, we looked at starting out and creating some, generic shape. Day 4, we dug into that. We looked at the structure. We used lines to really help us understand things. And now one of the big problems that we face is that everything is flat and kind of rough. And so in this phase, what we do is we put life back into the sculpture. And this phase should always exist, but there's a lot of things you got to be careful of. Okay, and the biggest issue you got to be careful of, in fact, we can look at right in the eye area to help us understand that. But before we get into the meat and the potatoes of today's presentation, I just want to remind you, my name's Ryan Kingsline. I am I'm an artist, a sculptor, painter, poet, and I run a couple of academies. Game Art Institute is where you can see all the 12 days of realism. You head over into the blog, and right there it'll take you through to be, as soon as this thing loads, to see all of the different posts that I've done today. And specifically, and the reason why I wanted you to kind of see this before I get into the meat and potatoes of it is so that you can see where the files are, where the basic file, like is it this one? No. Sort of. Well, it looks like I don't have the basic one loaded in here, but it's an earlier version of this one. Essentially what we've got right here at the beginning of the conversation. And it's going to include the eyes and a bunch of other elements. You can go to the blog section here where you can kind of go down and track the different days of the 12 days of realism. But specifically what I wanted you to see is the third day. And because in the third day, that's where you're going to get the ZTL, the OBJ, and the pure ref files that are there, right? And this is going to be important if you want to kind of follow along and try your own Jean-Claude Van Damme. Remember, this is Jean-Claude 3D. Jean-Claude 3D December. We're going to figure it out. I'm still working on the name. Anyways, head over. Let's close that out. Let's head over to the Game Art Institute. Head over to the blog. You can get the files. And let's get ourselves working. Where is it? Is it this one? No, I think it's this one. All right. Like I said, the big thing that we're dealing with today is we're dealing with volume. Because we've got stuff. We've got, things on the canvas. We've got paint on the canvas. And now what we're really talking about is rendering the form. And here's the big problem that we get into. And if we load the reference, where is my reference? There it is. And I'm going to, when we start working like this, I like to, if I can, this does not always respond to my, come on, you can do it. There we go. I like to work kind of split screen. I think that that's kind of a decent way to kind of go about this. I don't need to see these toolbars anymore. You got to double click them nowadays. I don't need to see any of these things because I kind of know my brushes. If you need to see what's going on, just post a question in chat and I'll try occasionally to keep them up. But usually you'll see when I make big adjustments. All right, here's the deal. This is the problem. Number one problem that we get into, okay? It stems from the fact that you only draw what you know, not what you see. You have to remember, and I did this early on in day 1, I talked about the number one problem and the biggest thing that's missing is that people will tend to create the volume and go right to the form, and they miss structure. What is structure? Structure is the relationship between parts. That means that you need to have individual parts and you need to be thinking about how they relate. You only draw what you know. So a big part of what you do and must do is go through and find structure. Okay? Always find structure. So here's one of the big issues. In fact, I think I have something on my Instagram with this issue. And it's worth a quick head over to my Instagram so that you can see it. In fact, somebody even commented on this problem. Yeah, it's right here. All right, what's wrong with these eye bags? Look at this. Look at how consistent that is. Look at how, you know, what is it? Steady angle. Hey, you know, you can always rely on other people to point out whatever's going on, right? So here's my little bit of wisdom to you. You got to look for more, all right? So when I'm looking here, I might see, oh yeah, eye bag, da, 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 da. But the pro is going to be the one who goes into that next level and starts really looking for these things. Let's say, no. And let's look here. This is a really good one. Okay, oops, let's turn this thing off. This nice little button down at the bottom drives me nuts. This guy right down here. Make sure that's off. Anyways, take a look at this and you see kind of a little bit of a form moving in this way, and you see some breakup to it. And so you need to start to pay, part of what it is you're like a canary in the coal mine looking for these tiny little valleys that signify things. That's how you learn, right? You go up there and you get super sensitive to all the little doohickeys and the movements, and you're looking like mad, you know, to try to understand all of this. You know, because here I can see some volume, but I definitely see a change right there. Okay, here I see some volume and I see another change right in there. Now, do I need to have mastered anatomy and all that stuff? I've done a lot of anatomy study, a lot. Okay, but I've also known a lot of amazing sculptors who didn't do 50% of the anatomy study I did and produce amazing, wonderful results. And this is because the codified study of anatomy is slightly overrated. And what's more important is for you to really just develop your capacity as a sculptor to pay attention to the small little bumps. You see, now we got a small little bump. We got a little bump right inside there, and this. And to just always be deepening your understanding and paying attention. That's it, right? So when we come in here and we start to build this form, I spent a lot of time talking about that, but it is literally the #1 problem that we're facing here. Okay, had to load this back in. We lost pressure sensitivity there for a moment. So let's get ourselves back into this conversation. And as I'm building up form, and let's divide this once. I'm not just going to come in and go da 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 and be done with it. I'm going to be building form up into pockets. And when I build form up, I have a particular way in which I do it, right? So volume, the biggest problem you can get into is you simplify everything and you rope everything together. So there's 2 strategies. 1, you work in clumps. 2, you work down the form and across the form. And that helps you build volume where you want it. So wherever you want to build volume, like I want a form to come down more towards the bottom, I'm going to work down the form there, then I'll work across it to get it into shape. That's going to be the primary strategy. So I'll work, you know, down the form, I start to establish it, and then I'll work across it, and then down it. And I'm using, again, these are my brushes. You can head over to ZBrush Workshops, and this is the RK Rake. I also put the rake brush inside of ZBrush, and so this was my little contribution. Not, you know, I put the slash brush in there. There's a bunch of other brushes I put in there, but this was the one I'm really like most proud of. And so I just made my modifications to it because right now with the new ZBrush and all that stuff, it kind of behaves like crap now. Hasn't been updated, of course, because I don't work there anymore. All right, let's get this look on. All right, there we go. So my goal here is to simplify but not be too simple. So you got to simplify but in a way in which you're also taking into account all the complexity and thinking about all these different planes and and you're doing your best to divine from your reference what's the angle of that plane and how is that coming in contact with that plane, right? Those are all the things that you have to start to understand, and that's one of the reasons why I like the rake brush so much. Come on, let's get a problem right there. Is because, you know, it's very, what the, it happens because of a math anomaly. So normally I would just send that right off to Pixel. Yeah, it's right there on that edge. So I'm gonna just rotate it slightly. Probably will resolve that. Okay. In day 4, the last day, I talked about how this nostril wasn't quite lined up. And again, I've sculpted this face multiple times, so I'm going to have knowledge, and you're going to be looking at it like, how'd you get this? Well, one of Gareth asked me yesterday what how many, if I thought iterations was important for doing likenesses. And for me, iterations are not important, they're absolutely essential for you when you're doing likenesses, because you have to kind of, and you have to, it's a performance when you're doing this. And if it doesn't happen, you know, if there's hiccups, you got to look at those hiccups, you got to re-perform them, and you want it to kind of flow a little naturally. You know, that's generally the idea. Not because this is some kind of macho deal, but because one thing leads to another thing leads to another. And so if you've got the flow right, then that's going to really help you in your performance and in your representation. So for me, you know, when I first did JCVD, I spent over a week just doing iterations and working, and you know, and I had a lot of other things I had to do, you know, to run the business and work with my boot campers and all that. So it wasn't full-time work. And you know, for a lot of people, that's like, what? There's no way, I don't have that much time. But really, what you're saying when you say that is you're saying, I don't trust myself. I don't trust that that's going to be a useful way to spend my time. And the truth of this is that you simply will not grow, and you will not advance to that next stage until you learn to trust yourself and give yourself the time that you need, that everybody needs. Let's get our lines in a little bit more of an agreement. There we go. So here's an example of me with the rake brush. You see, I see a little bit of a form moving in, and I push this in. I also know that form from understanding the anatomy of the zygomatic, and so, you know, I'm anticipating that. But there we go. Again, I'm looking to see where's the high. High is right there. There we go. And I got to be careful, you know, because you build up too much here and you screw up everything that you might have done from another view. So you got to be mindful. And with volume, again, you got to be, volume is an agent of structure, so never forget structure. So, for example, as I come in here and I try to work this bottom part of the eye, and I got to remember that this whole zygomatic, it comes in and it connects and it forms the bottom part of the orbit of the eye that then comes in to, you know, the nose and helps establish the nasal opening, and, you know, and the maxilla's in there, and there's all these things happening here. But very specifically, this zygomatic comes in this way, so it goes over to the other side of the nose. So I need to make sure, you know, I'm not just worried about, hey, I got to figure out this bump over here, you know. I'm thinking about this bump, and I'm thinking about how that bump comes over and essentially connects to the other side all the way. So this is a bump, but it's also coming and it's going underneath all of this nonsense and then coming back and all wrapping all the way around there. So what I'll do now is I'm gonna kind of go underneath there. So in my mind's eye and looking from below on this, there we go. There we go. All right, so a lot going on in there, but I'm taking that and moving it all the way over. And then on top of that sits eye bags and all of that nonsense. So I got to make sure this sits on top of that. But there we go. All right. Now this eye area, this corner right in here, this is a real crazy one on this guy. It's a real crazy one in, you know, a lot of people. You know, understanding this, it's going to mean a lot once you do. I need to suck that back in around that eye. There we go. And overall, that orbit of the eye, this got really wonky. So let's move topological. So I'm just moving that top eye. There we go. And then just tuck that back. Okay, and then maybe I can do some little bit of alt to push that along the normal. There. Okay, feel okay-ish with that, but this is the view I'm working with the most right now. Emphasize, get a little bit of volume in there. And you know, my goal, I should preface, my goal is not 100% of the realism here. This is, when you get into the rake, this is still a construction process. So I'm still constructing what I see and trying to make this kind of fit to a certain reality. I'm not trying to put realism into it. I'll smooth all this out and then get into that phase. Okay. How are we doing? Did we lose any likeness? And I like to check very far away. All right. So we can probably go back to the nose here. So I just press Alt and then I let go of Alt and build up, and I do it all in one stroke. So it might be a little hard for you to follow exactly what I'm doing, but that's what I'm doing. Get this form really moving inside of that nostril. This is one of I had a revelation. If I was able to put that form all the way in, just is better. A little volume, volume. Okay, and there's a really important form. I'm going to press Alt. It's really hard to know it, and there's no real name. But the skin and the muscle and all that stuff right around here underneath the nose, these develop a little bit of extra volume. It's barely discernible unless you kind of know to look for it. But there just gets a little bit of a hit as the form moves in there. Okay, let's get a little bit of this form overlapping that nostril. And just right up here at the top. Just right up here at the top. And then we'll pull that up. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to take it back just a tiny bit. Okay, and a little bit of volume there. All right, Gotta clear up any of these kind of lines that really start to screw with it, like that. There you go. Take the Carmilla out a little bit. Okay. All right. Always trying to make sure, you know, if you need to, smooth it out to see if there's any flat spots. I see some flat spots. So I'm going to come back through here with this clay brush and really just give them some good, and you've got to do this in these big, smooth, broad strokes, or you get these kind of flat and dead spots, which kind of destroys the whole purpose of what we're doing here. Big moves, not the small moves, Ellie. Big moves. Cheeks go to the bottom of the nose, but as I know from side views of him, you know, things kind of dissipate in there pretty quick. All right. And I also know from a couple of other views, let's find some that would really work for you. There's a bunch of light hitting right here. This is something that we miss a lot, but that's actually an upward plane. And that's just part of knowing structure. Whoops. So we got to make sure that, you know, it's got a good upward plane. And I can see, you know, that the thing with Jean-Claude is where this is in position to where this is. And if we look at this guy from a side view, where is that side view? Yeah. That plane is there, and you come down and you're like, ah, look at that. There's a lot of meat and potato right there in that. And this is what I'm trying to get now, is I'm trying to get this line as we move down. That line, I'm trying to get the volume properly laid out. So let's just look at it from this view. So that's a little farther forward than I had it. So much so I can almost use the move brush. Well, you gotta be a little careful with that. And then it looks like, yeah, there we go. You gotta really ramp that up. I'd carved it away a little too much trying to get this under part of the eye, or nose. There we go. I feel more comfortable about that. And this is, you know, if you're new to this, this is something that's, it's hard to see this. It's a mileage game. Okay, and then this form's also, it's coming in this way, but the form is also moving this way. So we're following the form here, but there's a roundness that moves this way. You can tell by the light and the shadow, right? The shadow's appearing right there. So we use that. That's part of it. I mean, of course, their beard is, there's that hair and all of that, and that can be quite a nuanced distraction. But there we go. And there. Okay, and I'm going to separate the lip from whatever else is going on over there, right? Again, we're using our moment to add volume. We're using this to further the aim of structure. It's still got some lines and some structure happening in here. I'm going to flatten this a little bit because he's older. Yeah. Don't need a ton of volume in there, right? And yes, I love leaving my strokes like this. we'll see at the end, you know, this is a really simple thing to kind of resolve, but I need to keep my eye out. There's a flat spot right there. Something happened. Okay, close it off on the inside, open it up on the outside, close that off. There we go. Big round strokes. There we go. All right, cool. Good. You see it start to develop, right? And this is just me. I'm doing this. I'm playing around with you while I do this and talking. You know, it's important to understand and remember, you know, that this is serious work, right? Peter Paul Rubens studied for 14 years to become a painter. For you to be able to learn this stuff, you see these guys out there doing it, and if you're sitting here thinking, oh man, I can, you know, of course you can do it. But if you're sitting there thinking like, I don't need to study my 15 years, you're mistaken. At the very least, you got to put a month in of solid work to just get your head around the conversation, right? How much am I missing? You know, there's a lot that I'm missing, and that's okay, because the goal for us here is to get a better sock, so to speak. You know, we started out when we started out with this kind of like all the details were in there. We had the lines, we had the structure, but we had really crap form, as in it looked like you know, everything was kind of flat and it didn't look like skin. And so the goal that you and I have right now is we just need to breathe life into this and make sure, you know, that wherever this is, we're not seeing those lines anymore. And instead what we're seeing is we're seeing a curve, and we're seeing something bulging forth, right? Like I'm making this sternocleidomastoid, I'm making that round. I'm going to go down the form, and then I'm going to round it so that we get a sense of this really strong neck right in there. I'll pull that all the way down and then wrap it around like this, and I'm going to subtract any flat planes. And then we do the same for the trapezius. I'm going to put this little anchor in there, carve those out, and then there we go. Let ZBrush save, because that's the kind thing to do. And I'm going to call it a day here in this in just a moment. But the principal thing that I want you to see is how much we can, how much we can do just working the form in this procedural way. So I'm going to show you how to deal with the rake brush. It's going to be the last thing I show, so make sure you stick around till we get that. How do you deal with the rake brush and all the crazy of what's happening there? Keep in mind that there is the frontal bone and the parietal bone, and those are two separate bones. Of course, there's the temporalis in there. But at the very least, do the big structural components, and then you can come back in and do the smaller differences and elements. So see right there, I'm just centering on parietal and frontal. I come back here, and I like to get the nuchal line in there just by doing that. Pretty much a straight line along towards the mastoid, so I like to come somewhere towards the back and then just shoot down. There you go. And then that's that this little notch back there that the trapezius comes in and fills. Voila. Starting to get something, but no matter what we're getting, we're absolutely getting round, beautiful form that we can really work with, right? It's going to really help open up our realism and all of that. Okay, I'm gonna grab a little bit of a form right there, and then let's round that out a little bit. I'm just gonna fill it a tiny bit. This is one form left. Okay, the mouth and then the chin. Love this form. There we go. The way I like to think about the chin, you get this form moving just like that. And it goes underneath a bunch of stuff. So round that out. Okay, look at that. So much more to do, you know, so much more, but we've got beautiful, in my view, beautiful form. Let's compare. Let's compare. Let's leave this one over here on the side, come over here and go back all the way to the beginning. That's what we had before. We're not done, right? I might have moved something incorrectly. We don't have some nuances. We don't have necessarily all the forms intact. Let's take a look at this. You know, there's a lot of little things that we could easily have missed. You know, there's this nice little half tone right here, and I just have one shape coming into there, but they've got more nuances. Okay, there's a little bit more nuances happening, you know, in terms of how this cheek comes down. Actually, I got that pretty good. I'm missing this kind of, let's do red. I'm missing this kind of planar break. I don't have a good planar break happening in there. I don't have a good planar break happening in separating the frontal eminence, you know, and this appears to kind of cave in more. And there appears to be a little more roundness than I have in here, and there appears to be a little bit more of a hit. But what I've done now is gone from this kind of sketch level to I'm starting to render form. And that's the next step for us to do. And it's a really great place for us to stop, because now we have created beautiful 3D form and we've got very basic form. Now the next thing is how do we take this kind of basic, beautiful roundness and start to go back to structure, but without getting the flat spots and the things of the model on the left. All right, thank you so much for being here. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you learned, one revelation that you really learned out of day 5 of the 12 days of realism. I'm really excited to be sharing this stuff with you. You know, our ultimate goal is to get ourselves over to where you are learning the techniques, the tools, the strategies to be able to get something awesome inside of, you know, something like marmoset. I'm going to stick with marmoset. There's a lot more to cover. Fuzz, wrinkles, stubble, you know, and there's all the texturing and all of that. And I'm hoping to get all of that within some semblance of the 12 days of Christmas. Make sure you head over to gameartinstitute.com. You can go over to the blog section, and that's going to tell you, it's going to take you right here to the 12 days. You can just head up over there. Hopefully this thing will load just fine. You can learn more about the podcasts that we put together, that I go and interview friends and just people that I've known in the industry for a long time and people I want to get to know. So and you can also head over here to the 12 Days of Realism, and you just click that tag and you'll go in there. Remember, all of your models are in day 3, and then also keep in mind that as of now, there are open seats in the mentorship. So I have it's 10 people, and I have a mentorship that's coming, and we kind of bundled it. I thought this would be kind of a cool thing for you. We bundled it with a bunch of these dudes. I got to throw my work up there. I'm so used to sharing other people's work. I rarely throw my own up there. But you've got an on-demand bundle of these amazing artists that can help further you. And if you come down and you choose the live mentorship is, you know, you literally get that stuff for free, and then it's just cost you this for the 4 weeks, and it's 2 meetings a week, which is, in my experience with the game art bootcamp that we've done, this is how you grow an artist. You don't do once a week, because once a week's too long for somebody to drift. You do twice a week. That makes a difference. So we've thrown in all these bundles in there, and as of right now, this is still open. So I still have some seats for the live mentorship. Head over to gameartinstitute.com. You can learn more about the other 12 days of realism, and leave a comment and let me know what you found useful about this. All right, I look forward to working with you and walking you through this step by step. All right, have a great day.